Flexible PCB assembly manufacturer including SMT. SMT is a new generation flex PCB manufacturing process of electronic assembly technology, which comprises traditional electronic components into components with only a few tens of the volume, thus realizing high density, high reliability, miniaturization, low cost, and automation of electronic products assembly. Such miniaturized components are called SMD devices, or SMC, chip devices. The process of assembling components onto a flexible printed board PCB is called the SMT process. SMT is a very complex process in which each component is strategically positioned and installed on the board for optimal function, which is one of the reasons why SMT and SMD overlap. According to the special properties of the product, the number of components, and the placement rate, it is appropriate to use a medium and high-speed placement machine for placement. Because there are optical marks for positioning on each piece of FPC, there is a big difference between the upward SMD placement on the FPC and the upward placement on the PCB. It should be noted that although the FPC is fixed on the carrier board, its appearance may not be as flat as the PCB hardboard. There will definitely be some holes between the FPC and the carrier board. Therefore, the suction nozzle is lowered and the pressure of the atmosphere is blown. The force etc. needs to be set very accurately, and the nozzle moving speed needs to be reduced. At the same time, the majority of FPC is connected to the board, and the yield of FPC is relatively low, so it is normal for the whole PNL to contain partial bad PCS, which requires the placement machine to have the bad mark identification function, otherwise, in the production OF such under the condition that the non-integrated PNL is a good board, the production rate will be greatly reduced. Reflow soldering of FPC. It should be considered appropriate to use a forced hot air convection infrared reflow oven, so that the temperature on the FPC can change more evenly, reducing the initiation of poor welding. If the single-sided tape is used, since it can only fix the four sides of the FPC, the half-middle part is deformed under the condition of hot air, the pad is easy to be tilted, and the molten tin, liquid tin at high temperature, will flow and initiate empty welding, and continuous welding, tin beads, so that the pour rate of the process is higher. 1. Temperature curve test method. Because the heat absorption of the carrier board is different, the types of components on the FPC are different, the temperature rises at different speeds after being heated during the reflow soldering process, and the calories used for reference are also different. The temperature curve has a great influence on the welding quality. A more appropriate method is to place two FPC-equipped carrier boards on the front and back of the test board according to the actual production carrier board spacing, attach components to the FPC of the test car rear board, and use high-temperature solder wire to test the temperature. The probe is soldered at the test place, and the probe wire is fixed on the carrier board with high-temperature tape. Note that the high-temperature tape should not cover the test area. The place where the test is performed should be selected near the solder joints and QFP pins on all sides of the carrier board, and the final result of such a test can better reflect the real situation. 2. Setting of the temperature curve. In the furnace temperature adjustment, since the temperature uniformity of FPC is very poor, it is best to use the temperature curve form of heating, warm keeping, reflow as appropriate so that the parameters of each temperature zone are easy to control, and additional FPC and components are subject to thermal shock. The impact should be smaller. According to experience, it is best to adjust the furnace temperature to the lower limit of the technical requirements of the solder paste. The wind speed of the reflow furnace is generally considered appropriate, and the lowest wind speed that the furnace can consider suitable is used. The chain of the reflow furnace is more stable. Shake is not allowed. Inspection, testing, and subboard of FPC. Because the carrier plate absorbs heat in the furnace, especially the aluminum carrier plate, the temperature is high when it is released from the furnace, so it is best to increase the cooling fan at the furnace outlet to help reduce the temperature quickly. At the same time, operators need to wear heat insulating gloves to avoid being burned by the high temperature carrier plate. When taking the soldered FPC from the carrier board, use even force, and do not use brute force to prevent the FPC from being torn or creased. The removed FPC should be visually inspected under a magnifying glass more than 5 times, focusing on problems such as residual glue on the surface, discoloration, tin dip on gold fingers, tin beads, IC pin empty soldering, and continuous soldering. Because the appearance of the FPC cannot be very flat, the false positive rate of the AOI is high, so the FPC is generally uncomfortable cooperating with the AOI investigation, but with the help of a special test fixture, the FPC can complete the ICT and FCT tests.